And here we go, the official start. So, welcome to my lecture about Romanian gypsy music for today. So, well, I don't know if you all know me. I'm a violinist and I've been researching Eastern European and Balkan Romani music for more than 20 years. And from playing this music, learning to play it, I went later to also researching it. Here now we have another participant coming again. Let's hope she is lucky this time and manage to come in. And yes, and so I have been learning a lot of Romanian music from Romani people by ear, the traditional way, myself. And so, it's a subject. Hello, nice to see you.
Hello.
It's a subject which is very interesting for me. So, in order to introduce you to Romanian gypsy music, I thought I'm gonna do something. I just put into YouTube search Romanian gypsy music just to see what comes out. It might be a good idea now if we... I can't mute myself. I'm gonna mute you so that the tone transmission is a little bit better. So let me do my first screen share for today. And I will play you the two results which came up when I was doing my search for Romanian gypsy music, because they're actually very appropriate. So.
Yeah, I remember this kind of music.
Yes, that's enough of this one. I let it play on a little bit so that you can see the man's dancing style, because the people who were there last week, you remember that it's very similar to the Hungarian, male's dance style. Okay, about the music we talk later, and now I play you the other result, which came up in my search for, that were literally the two first occurrences which came up in the search for Romanian gypsy music. Yes. Okay, so I don't know if the band which played the Tarafte Haiduks is also known in Turkey. They are quite famous all over all over the Western world, which we can say Western Europe, America, and so on. But we talk about the music again a little bit later, and Tarafte Haiduks will also play a big part of it. Okay, so now, in order to understand Romanian music as a whole, I'm gonna play you two other links. This came out as the first two results of the YouTube search on Romanian peasant and traditional music. Okay, so let me get back to my shared screen on this one. Yes. So this was quite a different experience with a whistle, which is like a shepherd's flute, called fluvie in Romania. And then we have here another one. Yes, and so on.
Can I just ask a question? The flute was similar to our kaval. What was the instrument's name? I can't hear.
It was fluvie. And yes, it is interesting. It is similar to your kaval. And I talk about details of the music in the instruments a little bit later. So these first few links were just meant to be an introduction of Romanian gypsy music and Romanian folk and peasant music. And I thought it was quite interesting because I literally just thought, let's see what YouTube spits out if I put those searches in, and really appropriate links came out. Okay. Anyway, so as I said, we talk about the details of this music a little bit later. First, I will give you again a little bit of a history overview, because it's quite important to know a bit about the history in order to understand. So, last time we heard already that Romani people, and let me just give a tiny bit of a recap from the beginning, that Romani people came from India, from Punjabi, northern India, and left about 500 past Christ, so 1,500 years ago, onto a migration all over the world. And in Europe, they arrived, Europe and Romania, they arrived, oh, Cenk is coming in, let me quickly admit him. Yes, and they arrived in Romania on the 14th century. We also heard already that the Romani who stayed in Romania and did not go further to Hungary or other countries, they unfortunately became slaves, and the earliest records of slavery were as early as 1385. And we also heard that, I don't know if you know about Dracula, that our Count Dracula, Vlad Dracul, was one of the key initiators. Now, Romani people were very much sought after slaves, because they had like very good crafts, and so they were very, very valuable. Nevertheless, their treatment was really harsh, and they had even lesser rights than other Romani people. Now, mid of 15th century, Romania became a province of the Ottoman Empire, and this stayed on, and everything went the same, or nearly the same, until about the beginning of the 19th century, when slavery was abolished and Romanian gypsies were free again. Many of them left the country, but the ones who stayed actually experienced that their situation did not improve very much. Then, in the middle of the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire finished, Romania left the Ottoman Empire and was also in this respect free again. And so in the early 20th century, for the first time, Romani people, they started to collectively stand and fight for their own rights. Unfortunately, then there was World War I, and then fascism kicked in, and World War II. And so their movement for freedom was very shortcut. And we all know about Holocaust, which was, very played a big role in Romania, where many Jewish people, but also a lot of Gypsy people, Romani people, were just like killed. And after World War II, the Ceausescu regime took over. Okay, so maybe I want to make today shorter paragraph for you to translate. So maybe if you translate now an overview of this first bit of history.
Okay. Actually, I tried to write down here what you talk about. If you want, you can continue. If anybody want to ask something. Buraya kadar takip edebildiniz mi? Yani yazmaya çalıştım ana hatlarıyla. Dilerseniz devam edelim. Bu şekilde yazarak daha hızlı ilerleyebiliriz sanırım.
Tabii nasıl daha kolay olursa.
Anlamadığınız bir nokta varsa hani konuşalım. Yoksa ben eş zamanlı olarak önemli noktaları yazmaya çalışıyorum.
Tamam, bence yani gayet güzel. Diğer hani katılanlar için ve sonradan seyredecekler için nasıl uygun görürseniz öyle yapalım.
Tamam. Peki.
Tamam.
Merhabalar.
Okay. Merhaba hocam, hoş geldiniz.
Hoş bulduk. Hello Gundula.
Hi, Cenk. Where are you driving to? You're not staying
Yeah.
in lockdown.
To the concert place. Yes. Sorry for disturbing you. I just want to say hello and thank you very much again.
You're very welcome. So
Yes,
are you staying with us for a bit and listening?
yes, for a bit, and I will be listening. Thank you.
Because then I'm going to put you on mute. And we just had a question. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Now, yes, there was a question, and
Okay, we can go on. I try to write down here. But you
on the chat, yes, I can see everything.
yes, they can read there.
You can read exactly. Yes. Do you know if the chat will also stay there on the recording so that people who listen to it later can actually read?
Actually, yazdığımız şeyler kayıtta daha önce baktınız mı? Kayıt edilenler içerisinde mesajlarda görünebiliyor mu? Sonradan gelip izleyebilecek arkadaşlarımız için.
Ben şu anda okuyorum şahsen şimdi yazdıklarınızı.
Hayır, şu an görünüyor da kayıtta da bu yazılanlar kalıyor mu acaba?
Kayıtta kalmıyor bildiğim kadarıyla Ezgi ya.
Kalmıyorsa o zaman hocam çok hızlıca yapalım.
Aynen,
Özet
sen
olarak.
çeviri yap Ezgi.
Tamam. I think we need to translate. I can summarize what you said. Şu ana kadar kısaca Romanya'daki Çingene müziklerin tarihçesinden kısaca söz ettik. Daha önce de bahsettiğimiz gibi Hindistan'dan zaten roman grupları dünyanın pek çok yerine dağılmışlardı. Avrupa'ya, Batı Avrupa'ya ve Türkiye'ye, Batı Avrupa'ya da geldiler. Romanya da bu bölgelerden bir tanesiydi. İlk olarak birkaç tane video izledik. Burada başlamadan önce şunu izah etti bize. İlk başta acaba dedi YouTube'a Romanya'da Çingene müzikleri yazsak nelerle karşılaşacağız ve burada birkaç tane örnek gördük. Bunlardan bir tanesi de özellikle Batı Avrupa'da ve Türkiye'de de tanınan müzisyenlerden bir tanesi Haydok'tan bahsetti. Burada özellikle kavala benzeyen farklı bir enstrüman da dikkatimizi çekmişti ancak bununla ilgili ayrıntılara ilerleyen bölümlerde gireceğiz. Şimdi genel olarak tarihçeden bahsedeceğiz dedik. Özellikle burada izlediğimiz iki videoda daha önceden söz ettiğimiz dans stilleri, o dans, Macaristan'da konuştuğumuz dans tarzına ilişkin bazı benzerlikler olduğunu da söyledi. Devamında ne dedik? Yine aslında kısaca tarihçeden bahsettik. Daha önce de değindiği bazı noktalar vardı. İlk olarak geldiklerinde maalesef özellikle 14. yüzyıl daha geriye gidildiğinde köle olarak işte Macaristan ve ötesine köle olarak romanların gittiğini ancak 19. yüzyılın başlarına doğru köleliğin terk edildiği ve tekrar müzisyen olarak roman müzisyenlerin özgürlüklerine kavuşabildiklerini söyledi. Yine 19. yüzyılın ortaları sonlarına doğru Osmanlı'dan ayrılıyor Romanya. Kendi hakları için mücadele ediyorlar. Tabii İkinci Dünya Savaşı'ndan etkilenip pek yaşamını yitiriyor. Kısaca tarihten bahsettik ve buradan devam ediyorduk. Okay, you can continue.
Yes. So, the next chapter of history is basically after World War II, when when Ceausescu took over with the socialist regime. And they had the aim to create a completely homogeneous Romanian society with all socialist workers equal. And so the regime started a process of total assimilation and a gradual elimination of all national and social differences. Roma people were considered very foreign, and so it was one key aim for them to become like Romanian socialists and live a Romanian socialist life. And they did not have the right to represent themselves as ethnic minority, and they could not live according to their own culture. Unfortunately, communism destroyed many of their occupation and many elements of their lifestyle. They also forbade singing in Romani language or any Romani music altogether. Anyway, afterwards, in 1989, when Ceausescu was executed, there was new hope for Romani people, but unfortunately, again, their situation did not really improve. It became even worse for some people, because even though in socialist systems they could not live their own life, they at least had the same rights. There was, at least on the surface, no discrimination and no oppression of Romani culture and Romani people, and socially they were again on the surface equally valued. And yes, they had work and they had places to live, so they were not poor. And when socialist regime was gone, then this protection also left, even though they were free again. Okay, so that is a little bit of the overview of the history. Maybe if you translate this bit, because afterwards we go to the music.
Bu bahsettiğimiz tarihte Romanya'daki Çingenelerin yaşamıyla ilgili sosyalist rejimden sonrasını ve sosyalist rejimin getirdiklerinden birazcık bahsettim. Maalesef Romanya halkıyla eşit haklara, yani onlarla aynı haklara sahip olamadılar. Yani burada bir ayrımcılıkla da karşı karşıya kaldılar. Bir takım burada liderlerin değişikliği bir dönem onlar için ümit olsa da çok da beklediklerini bulamadılar diyelim. Genel olarak buradaki yaşadıkları ayrımcılıktan ve rejim değişikliğinden söz ettik kısaca. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So now let's go back to the Romani music. There are very few mentionings in academic literature, and there's literally no writings about Romani musicians or Romani music before the mid of the 20th century. It is only mentioned that sometimes that they play peasant music and traditional music. I will first list you some facts of Romani and their music, and by facts I mean things which I have experienced myself on my travels and when interacting with people, and where I also found some evidence in academic literature. So there is loads and loads of Romanian Romani musicians who perform music as a profession. The tribe, or one of the tribes of Romanian Romani musicians, is called lautari. Now, lautari is in Romania simply the word for musician. Those ones are professional musicians, and they perform mostly for parties like weddings and other celebrations and birthdays and village or other festivities. And that's how they earn their money. And they have been musicians for many generations, learning the traditional way, meaning that a son will learn from his grandfather or his father or an uncle, just from some elder, the trade of being a musician, and also will learn the repertoire. The Romani musicians, they had as also...
Excuse me, what was the name of that tribe you mentioned about?
Let me write this in the chat, because then you know the... Oh, where's my chat gone? Here's the chat gone. Lautari. So, and this means musician. As in many other places, and as already mentioned, Romani musicians work for, play mainly for parties and other celebrations, and that's how they earn their money. And so they had to play repertoire according to the taste of the people who booked them, and so this influenced their music. There's another aspect which also is not just true for Romania, but in many other countries, that they are the custodians of old folk traditions. Because often the young people, they don't play the old traditions anymore. And I mean now young non-Romani people, because they get bored of it. It's not very fashionable, so they rather play some modern stuff. And so those music traditions would get lost unless Romani musicians would keep playing them, which they do. And so quite a long time later, because they pass things on by ear, you still can hear some old Romanian music traditions. But yes, I know the same applies to Hungary or to many other nations. In Romanian music performed by Romani people, there are two significant styles. And now we come back to our introduction videos where you heard two completely significant styles. One is Lautari music, which is the music which is mainly played by Lautari Romani musicians. And one is Manele. That was the first video we saw that, modern style, kind of funky party music. And first we will look at Lautari music in more detail. It is very difficult to distinguish Romanian music and Romani music. First of all, as you can already hear, if you don't use the term gypsy music, if you use Romani music, then Romani music and Romanian music sound so similar. And when translated to some other languages, it often even becomes more similar. And there is a lot of mix-up that many people say, when I say Romani music, oh yeah, you mean Romanian music? No, I mean gypsy music. Oh yeah, Romanian music. So it's quite difficult to distinguish. And then, yes, there has been very little research and very little where you can find out what Romani people played in the olden days before they had all these assimilations by Ceausescu going on. So I decided I'm gonna go down the route of researching and looking into some specific musicians and specific groups. So first of all, again, as a contrast, I want to play you a track which is a traditional Romanian folk track, very much one which is like a white Romanian folk music, which is a follow-on from the music of the Ceausescu regime, because as in many other socialist regimes, the music was cleansed from any foreign traces. So anything Gypsy, Romani, Turkish, Arabic, or any other traces were trying to be artificially eliminated. So a lot of new music was written, or old music like re-styled, and something, the result was something similar to this one. Yes. So you can hear, well, it's a very pretty music. It's very clean. It has a very clean beat, and there is no there is no creativity around it. The melody goes with the beat in a very simple way. There is no Eastern modes and no other elements of of Ottoman or Turkish or Romani style. It is nice and jolly and neutral, and in the Ceausescu times, this obviously served the propaganda of promoting a unified Romanian population and all the values, like, the beautiful girl and the traditional clothes and sort of a little bit of family life in a village house, all those sort of little bit naive traits. Okay, now let's listen to another track. This one is performed by a Romani singer. He is called Dona Dimitru Simița. And one interesting fact, even though in Ceausescu times Romani music was banned and forbidden, this man managed to get the permission to publish a few songs in Romani language. So let's listen to this piece. Okay, she has sang enough. We want the next one. That's yes. So you can hear that in this music there are it's a very, very, very different style. In the sleeve notes of this recording, you can find some information that this song bears reminders of the Romanian court music of the 18th and 19th century. And I suppose you also can hear that there's a lot more Ottoman elements involved, which makes sense because in this time Romania was occupied, 18th and 19th century, by Ottoman people. So the main instrument you can hear is a cymbalum. We saw this last time, and for you, Canan, it's just like a table with lots of strings and you play with little hammers. It has a little bit of similarities with the kanun.
Yes, I know cymbalum.
You know the cymbalum, perfect. Exactly. And this one is just accompanied by a little bit of bass and some accordion chords. And then the melody lines in both instrument and singing it's very ornamented. It's what you call in Romania mane style. It's similar, to Taksim. Some people even say it's like sort of the equivalent of Taksim, but obviously it's more Eastern European Balkan style rather than Turkish or Ottoman style. And the modes are also not very Western European modes. I suppose I'm not a specialist in makam at all, but it bears to me resemblance to the modes of makams rather than any kind of Western European modes. The accompaniment, it's not quite on one chord as it is in much traditional Turkish or Ottoman music. It does change, but it has very, very few changes. So, well, it's music, it's Romanian music, it's performed by a Romani singer, and the accompanying musicians will also be Romani musicians. All of them are from the Lautari tribe. But is it gypsy music, or is it Romanian music performed by Romani musicians? That is a question, and it's a question which we will run through many other things we will hear before trying to give some kind of answer to this one. Okay, as a next sample, I chose also a very well-known singer. She's called Gabi Lunca. And if some of you have seen the movie Gajudilo, which is like sort of in Romania and has a lot to do with Romani culture, and there is a guy who goes into Romani communities to look for the singer Gabi Lunca. He didn't find her, but he experienced loads of other stuff. So it's a great movie to watch with good music, and it has quite a lot of true facts of Romani culture in there, even though a lot of other stuff is just like entertainment. So Gabi Lunca, as I said, a Romani singer, also from the Lautari tribe. She was born in 1938, and she was a favorite of Ceausescu, even though Romani. And she, even in communism, when they all were on lockdown in a way, behind the Iron Curtain, she was touring internationally, and not many people were allowed this one. After communism in around 1990, she became a kind of leader of the Roma ethnicity, and she was driving forward that movement of independence, which I mentioned before in my little history speech. She was a driving force of this one. Later, she became Pentecostal, like the religion, and she sang mostly religious songs. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit of her singing. No, this one I want.
Și un pahar și cu un lăutar aș petrece așa până la ziua cu damigeana, cu rachiu, neică stai că viu mai aproape de tine să fiu. Când mi-e sufletul întristat, tot de dor și de oftat, iau și beau un păhăr și atunci ui de supărare, ui că inima mă doare și îi zic un cântecel. Cu damigeana și un pahar și cu un lăutar aș petrece așa până la ziua cu damigeana, cu rachiu, neică stai că viu.
Yes, this is Gabi Lunca.
About Gabi Lunca, you mentioned that she's from the Lautari tribe, right?
Yes.
And she also performed religious music, right?
Yes, this was later. So the story is obviously when she was born, then, some wars and then Ceausescu regime, and that's when she was a singer. And obviously in this time she must have sang folk music, and the folk music cleansed by the regime from any kind of Romani traces. But she must have been very good and very much supporting the cause in one way or the other. Otherwise she wouldn't have the possibility to travel abroad. And only later, when first socialist regime had finished, then she was in a way a Romani activist for a little while. And it doesn't say anywhere when she became Pentecostal. I mentioned it because it's quite funny. You find a lot of Romani people who take on religions and who become very religious, and they really indulge into it and forget everything else. So in a way, they again forget their own culture and become then religious. So that's why I thought it's interesting mentioning that fact. Yes, I again completely forgot to leave any spaces for translations. So maybe I finish about Gabi Lunka and then you can translate those 2 lots of Lautari music, because that is a good point of having a little interruption. So again, in this song, you could hear this lilting cymbalum rhythm and a prominent accordion, which played also quite ornamented. So definitely not in the old Ceausescu communist Romanian style, but much freer. However, the singing style of her was a lot tidier and cleaner. You know, it was very much with the rhythm, you know, beautiful, but not like you sometimes hear Romani singers who also like sing with a lot of ornamentation and a lot freer. And so from her singing point of view, the song did sound a lot more folky. And here we are back to the question. Okay, another thing, maybe you saw all other musicians also were Romani musicians. So the whole band was a Romani band, but the music they play, is it Romanian music? And it was here in a restaurant setting. I chose this clip you know, on purpose and not something from a CD. So, you know, just like to see the atmosphere where they used to perform, and they still, you know, you can still see this a lot in when you go to restaurants. But is this Gypsy Romani music, or is it Romanian music performed by Romani musicians? And right now I still will keep this question open. Okay, and now before we go to the next one, maybe you give us a little translation.
En son nerede kalmıştık? Yani hangi bölüme kadar gelmiştik? Hemen bakalım. Romanya müziğine geçelim dediğimiz kısımda kaldık değil mi? Çevirmediğimiz kısım. Tarihçesinden bahsetmiştik. Müzikle ilgili kısmı konuşmadık sanıyorum.
İkinci Dünya Savaşı'ndan sonraki işte o kısım daha kaldı.
Evet. Özellikle burada sosyalist rejim ve sonrasında, yani buradaki hani dediğimiz gibi onlar bir takım hani dışlanıyorlar. Her türlü etnik müziğe karşı bu rejimin tabii bir baskısı olduğunu genel olarak izah etmeye çalıştı. Lautari dediğimiz bir yani Çingene nasıl diyelim, Çingene gruplarından, hani topluluklarından bir tanesinin adı, özellikle ondan bahsetti.
Pardon, bir şey söyleyebilir miyim?
Evet.
Lautari oradaki müzisyenlere verilen isim. O yani müzisyenlere Lautari deniliyor.
Evet, Roman müzisyenlere bir bölümde verilen bir isim. Burada bir grup, bir müzisyen grubunun adı. Evet. Ve özellikle nesilden nesile, babadan oğula, işte toruna, hani aile nesiller boyunca müzisyenlik yapan bir grubun adı Lautari. Ve özellikle aslında bizim biraz abdal müzik geleneğini de anımsatır şekilde ben öyle algıladım. Özellikle pek çok işte kutlama, eğlence, pek çok ortamda müzik yapan da bir grup. Ve dolayısıyla yerel halkın, yani buradaki Romanya'daki yerel halkın müziklerini de etkilediklerini söylüyor. Özellikle gençler tabii eski geleneksel tarzda müziği çok beğenmedikleri, işte popüler bulmadıkları için bunlar giderek kaybolmasına rağmen Çingene müzikleri, yani onların icra ettiği müzikle birlikte eski tarzda aslında muhafaza edilmiş oluyor bir bakıma. Romanya müziğini, hani Romanya'daki müzik türünü genel olarak iki tür olarak çok genel bir sınıflama yaparak bu şekilde izah etti. Lautari müzik dediği, bir diğeri de modern, yani popüler müzik, günümüzdeki Romanya'daki popüler müzik türlerinden söz etti. Ancak genel, hani benim tüm anlatımdan genel kanım, ilk başta dinlediğinizde duyduğunuz zaman hani bu Çingene müziği mi, Romanya müziği mi, ikisi arasında ayırt etmek hakikaten çok zor. Birbirine çok benzedi ve birbirinin içine kaynaşmış durumda olduğunu söyledi. Devam edelim. Şimdi
Ezgi, bu arada devam etmeden bölmüş olmayayım. Şu iki tür müzik dedi ya, bu Romanya ve Çingene müziklerinin birbirine kaynaştığından söz etti. Bu ikinci tür dediği Mael ya da nasıl okunuyor bilmiyorum. Bu Roman dilinde olan grup. Hani diğeri Çingeneler Lautari.
Evet.
Diğeri de Roman grubu daha modern ve popüler dedi çünkü.
Yani Romanya'daki grup, evet oradaki Romanya'daki popüler müzikler, modern müziklerden söz ediyor. Yani bunlarla Çingene müzikleri olarak iki ana başlıkta açıkladı.
Evet.
Var mı burada sıkıntı? Devam edeyim mi?
We are getting a new...
Evet, devam edelim. Nerede kaldık? Dedik bu iki tür birbirine çok benzer olduğundan söz ettik. Buradaki bazı müzisyenlerden söz edeceğini, sosyalist rejimdeki olaydan bahsettik. Burayı geçelim. Ve buradaki örnekler özellikle çok fazla yaratıcılığın olmadığı, hani melodik açıdan çok fazla çeşitlemenin olmadığı, hani benzer melodilerin tekrar ettiği makamsal müzikten ya da Doğu müziğindeki o makamsal zenginlikten de biraz yoksun olduğunu. Yani aslında o rejimin baskısı altındaki müziklerden söz ediyoruz. Bu nedenle tüm yerelliklerden de arındırılmış bir müzikti diyebiliriz. Birkaç tane kayıt dinledik. Arada devam ediyorum. Ben de unutabiliyorum. O yüzden ben de aldığım notları anımsayarak. Evet. En son verdiği örnek tamamen farklı bir tarz dediği dinlediğimiz örnekte özellikle 18. 19. yüzyıldaki müzikleri anımsattığını. Çünkü o dönem halen biliyorsunuz Osmanlı toprakları içerisinde Romanya'da ve buradaki makamsal müziği anımsattığından bahsetti. Simbolin tam çalgının adını simbalin ana çalgı olarak görüyoruz. Akordeon eşlik ediyor buna. Avrupa modlarından daha çok makamsal müziğe yakın bir müzik türü oldu. Söyledik. Özellikle Gabi Lunko, yani burada az önce dediğimiz bir Lautari müzisyen topluluğundan, yani Lautari grubundan bir müzisyen Gabi Lunko'yu dinledik biraz önce. Bunun dışında bir dönem dinsel müzik icrası olarak da bahsetti. Ben o kısmı özellikle sordum. Bu tabii onun dönem dönem değiştiğinden bahsetti. Hani o rejim baskısı altındaki ile daha sonraki arasındaki değişimden söz etti birazcık. Romanyalı bir aktivist olarak sosyalist rejimden sonra onu tanıdığımızı söyledi. Yine burada dinlediğimiz şarkıda yine çalgının adı tam olarak neydi? Canan Hanım, siz daha iyi biliyorsunuz. Çalgıyla ilgili benim çok bilgim yok.
Santur.
Santur, pardon. Evet, gelmedi o aklıma. Santur çalgısı. Onun ritmi ve yine akordeonu burada duyabildiğimizi söyledi. Yani bu rejim, sosyalist rejim dönemine göre daha serbest, daha özgür bir tarzı görüyorsunuz dedi. Genel olarak bu şekilde toparlayalım. Buraya kadar sorunuz var mı? Ben de bazen kaçırabiliyorum. Bağlantıda aksayabiliyor bazı noktaları. Kusura bakmayın. Sizin takıldığınız noktalar olursa not alırsanız daha sonra aralarda sorabiliriz. Devam edelim mi? Var mı sorumuz?
Edelim, bir sorum olacak. Şimdi 8'e 5 var. Bu yayın bitecek mi? Devam ediyor mu? Öbürüne geçecek miyiz? Nasıl olacak?
Yani bu bittikten sonra bağlanırız diye düşünüyorum ama ben tabii ne kadarlık bir program hazırladıysa bu bitişte geçeriz diye düşünmüştüm. Sorayım ben de.
Tamam, yok teşekkür ederim. Tamam, hiç şey yapayım.
Tamam. Okay, we are done. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for translating.
But I would like to ask you something. Some terms, I can list some important terms. For example, the name of the musicians or name of the tribes. Some critical points. Can you just write down their name, please, when you're talking about some specific terms or names?
Okay, yes, I will try to do that. I don't even think of, but it's a very useful function to use the chat whilst talking. So yes, then let me actually start by typing something. You will see it anyway in the video, I suppose. Taraf de Oh, I'm even misspelling it. Haiduks. So this one is the next group we are dealing with. Another tribe of another band of musicians from the tribe of the Lautari musicians, and they have an interesting story because they are all from a village which is called Crejani, which is near Bucharest in Romania. And I actually have been there myself visiting them. And in this village, there's loads and loads and loads of amazing musicians. And one day when the world music movement became big, and you know, there were promoters starting to organize festivals for that, then two, I think in this case it was Belgium guys, went down there and collected a bunch of musicians and put them together in a band. They called this band Taraf to Haiduks. Taraf is the general name for a band. It comes from a word from an old word which translates as bandits, so like vagabonds, bandits, or something like this. But in this case, it's just like basically a band of musicians. Yes, and so they became famous as a band. And funny enough, if you are in Romania and you ask somebody, do you know the band Taraf to Haiduks? They have no idea who this is, because for them they're just like normal village musicians which play for weddings and funerals and birthdays and other parties. But well, anywhere in it doesn't matter if you're in Britain or in Germany or in the States as well, people who like this type of world music, like Balkan, Eastern European gypsy music, they all will know Taraf to Haiduks. So it's quite funny. Anyway, they are from the Lautari tradition also, and performed for weddings and stuff like that. And I shall start by playing one of their early tracks to you, and then we will follow their story a little bit. So that sounds quite wild and fast. Probably what many people much more would imagine when, you know, talking about Romanian gypsy Romani music. Now it is actually more close to Romanian folk music. It's like sort of kind of village and peasant music, which is naturally quite wild, but it's from the style more Romanian than anything else. It's more performance style, which you definitely can hear. It's played by Romani musicians and not by white Romanian musicians. Yes, now I'm gonna play you another piece, and this one has been recorded a lot later. So they have been touring internationally already. It is influenced by the world music demands, but anyway, there's some interesting development happening.
Neyse payı verdim onunla Neyse piraşa pırışı dışkıma musula demişkıma Aha! Kalma! Yerefin yerli bir tüde kap Neyse kanım almam saturası Kanım almam saturası Neyse yokum vakitte ne varsa Seyenlerinde şıpılması Sansım ne gelirsen nasıl Ben rüdene fanım varsa Davuzda yeşilde bola Uçtan borcu gandırloy Yine varsa Draculuy Draculawa Yatuluy Draculawa Yatuluy vay Ay danelelelele
Okay, my smooth fade out just didn't work very nicely this time. But anyway, so this sounded different. We still could hear our cymbalum driving away and all the accompaniments and everything. The singer still sings in Mane style, but it sounds now less Turkish influenced. It sounds much more personal and free and, you know, spontaneous. And also the way how the Wahlen improvises in between is a kind of new style. And so obviously I played this track because it comes in and it's all nicely shown, but also from, you know, the other development, because I'm obviously listening to their music from the beginning times, recently not so much anymore, but over the first 10 years I definitely followed it. And for me it really felt like they're finding a new Romani gypsy identity which they're bringing into the music. It's obviously, we don't know what Romani music which was not played for white audiences or for courts or for Ceausescu or whatever sounded when they played behind closed doors, like beginning of 20th and 19th century and even earlier. We don't know how much of these elements are coming back in the music. For our ears it's basically new and it sounds like, yes, they're finding a new Romani identity again in their music. Okay, let's play one other sample of the same band, which is even later.
Sunt sigură că știe toată lumea. O bărșin pere la me tu gioccherà la ciaie mande te ave I barval pude la ciaie o bărșin pere la me tu gioccherà la ciaie mande te ave
give this a sudden stop. There seem to be some slight delays sometimes in my internet when it gets a little bit stuck. I suppose you can hear this also, but I think you still can get a good impression of that song. So now that is a gypsy song. And that's a very interesting now combination of how things go about. This song is from Shaban Bayramovic, who is one of the most famous Gypsy Romani singers of former Yugoslavia. He's from Bosnia and also at Yugoslavian times. And he composed this song. It is with the Romani lyrics and definitely a Gypsy Romani song by all means. And Taraftu have been basically taking this song and have put it into their style. You can hear the cymbalum and the fiddle style, and also accordion style is definitely how it is played in Romania, not in Bosnia and not in Shaban Bayramovic's original arrangement. And I also can hear a couple of elements how the French manouche gypsies who play gypsy jazz play, so it's all a little bit mixed in there. And well, fusion is around everywhere, and so that is just like basically a real proper gypsy music fusion of different styles which they put into their music. Yes, so let's summarize this now a little bit, and then afterwards I suppose it's a good point for translation again. The music of the Lautari is okay, no, let me try this again. The music which is performed by Lautari Romani musicians is mostly based in Romanian folk or peasant style, and it has obviously a lot of Romanian folk elements. However, the performance style is often very Romani influenced. And a little bit later, when they had no Ottomans and no Ceausescus or any other influences, then in general they had again the ability to develop their own style a little bit more. Now, what is gypsy music? What is not gypsy music? From my experience, I would say it depends very much on who is listening to. If they perform at a festival in Britain or in Germany, probably in Turkey also, and people dance to it, all the people who are listening to would say, yes, this is definitely gypsy music. People in Romania would say this is Romanian music performed by Romani people. And from an ethnomusicology point of view, you also could not call it gypsy music because it has too many elements of not, of non-Romani influences. So it would be rather true to say it is Romanian music performed by gypsy Romani musicians. And yes, maybe this is now a good point to translate, the summary of everything of Taraftu.
Right after finish my sentence here, okay.
Yes, I was just remembering. Again, I didn't actually write anything on the chat and was thinking if there were any important terms. But yeah, when you're done.
It's okay, thank you. Taraf ve haydok dediğimiz, yani en son dinlediğimiz ve yine söz ettiğimiz Lautari müzisyenlerinden bir topluluk üzerine konuştuk son bölümde. Burada onların ilginç bir hikayesi olduğunu anlattı. Onların biliyorsunuz pek çok alan araştırması, etnomüzikolojik açıdan da çalışmalar yaptığını biliyoruz zaten. Bahsetmiştik ilk hafta. Orada yaptığı ziyaretlerde burada çok sayıda müzisyen olduğunu gözlemlemiş onların köyüne gittiği zaman. Taraf ismi grubun genel adıymış. Bu şekilde özellikle tanınmışlar. Oldukça meşhur olmuş grup daha sonra. Yine düğünler, doğum günleri, her türlü işte parti, organizasyon buralarda icra ediyorlar. Ve bunların kayıtlarını dinledik. Yani şöyle ilerledik. İlk dinlediğimiz kayıt bu grubun daha eski kayıtlarıydı. Sonra birazcık daha ilerleyen dönemlerdeki bir örneği dinledik. En sonunda da daha yakın dönemden bir örnek dinledik ve böylece aslında buradaki genel olarak bize anlatmak istediği dönem dönem o değişen etkileri birazcık özetlemeye çalıştı. Hep zaten vurguladığımız gibi kırsal müzik, yani buradaki Çingene müzikleriyle Romanya halkının müziklerinin oldukça benzer etkileşim halinde olduğunu söylüyor. Burada son dönemlerde özellikle dünya müziği dediğimiz bir kavram, yani popüler anlamda işte modern, artık modernleşme ya da popüler müzik ya da dünya müziği dediğimiz durumlar karşısında bu taleplerden, yani insanların bu dönemdeki beklentilerinden, taleplerinden de etkilenerek ikinci dinlediğimiz örneğin birazcık daha farklı olduğunu, hani önceden söz ettiğimiz, yani geleneksel eski tarzdan söz ettiğimiz özelliklerden biraz daha farklı ve özellikle ne dedik? Türk etkisi, yani Osmanlı dönemindeki işte makamsal, doğaçlama, bunlardan daha farklı yeni bir tarz ortaya çıkmaya başlıyor. Nerede kalmıştık? Daha sonra yeni, şöyle diyebiliriz, yeni Romanya Çingene kimliğini ifade eden bir örnek olarak nitelendirdi bu dinlediğimiz örneği. Daha da yakın döneme geldiğimiz zaman aslında bu bir Çingene şarkısı dedi. Şaban Bayramoviç'ten icra ettikleri bir örnek. Bosna, Yugoslavya taraflarını, ancak sözlerinin işte Roman dilinde yazıldığından bahsetti. Yine santur, akordeon görüyoruz. Ancak Şaban Bayramoviç'in kendi orijinal düzenlemelerinden de oldukça farklı. Ona da benzemiyor. Pek çok tarzın harmanlandığı, farklı farklı stillerin aslında iç içe geçtiği yeni bir stil olarak karşımıza çıkıyor. Bunun dışında aslında son kısımda da bir özetledik, bir toparladık. Lautaro müzisyenleri tarafından icra edilen şarkıların Romanya halk şarkılarından özellikle çokça unsur taşıdığını söyledik. Ve bu icra tarzı sonraki dönemlerde ne sosyalist rejim Çavuşescu döneminden ne de Osmanlı dönemindeki etkileri artık tamamen sembolize etmekten uzaklaşıyor. Yani yeni bir tarza doğru gidiyor. Pek çok ülkede yani pek çok gittikleri ülkelerde, festivallerde mesela bu gruplar icra ettiği zaman rahatlıkla şunu söyleyebiliyorsunuz: bu kesinlikle Çingene müziği diyorlar. Ancak etnomüzikolojik açıdan değerlendirdiğimiz zaman ise buna Çingene müziği diyemeyiz. Bunun içerisinde pek çok farklı unsurun, farklı müzik tarzlarından elementlerin olduğunu söyleyebiliriz diyor. Yani aslında hani duyulduğu zaman ikisinin ayırt edilmesi herhangi bir dinleyici için belki çok belirgin olmamakla birlikte son dönemde bu farklı unsurların etkileşim sonucunda ne kadar iç içe geçtiğini kısacası toparladık. Buraya kadar sormak istediğiniz bir şey var mı? Devam edelim mi?
Teşekkür ederiz, sağ ol.
Rica ederim. Umarım anlaşılıyordur. Hani yakalamaya çalışıyorum. Bazı noktalar belki kaçıyor olabilir ama ana hatlarıyla yakalamaya çalışıyorum.
Tabii çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Gayet güzel gidiyor. Anlaşılır. Ağzına sağlık.
Rica ederim. Okay, thank you. We are done until the last part.
Good. Okay, so before we go to another music style, let's talk a little bit about the instrumentation. And I did already put a couple of things here on the chat. I can't give it the 100% right spelling because I don't have the Romanian characters on there. So, a Lautari band, in the olden days, a typical lineup was, okay, first of all, the band was called Takim, which is like the first word I wrote here, but the I has a little hut on it. And this Takim, has the same roots as the word Taksim, the Turkish word. So it's from the Ottoman times. And then they also had a Walen, and the band was often led by a Walen, and a Kobza. A Kobza is a Romanian oud. It looks very similar to a to a Turkish oud. And they had a ney, but completely different, not completely different, but different from the Turkish ney. It was, it's like Mexican panpipes, so like lots of these little pipes. So that's how it looked like. Later, they got an accordion and a cymbalum, and then also a double bass in a band, and they did drop the kobza, and it was often replaced by this instrument which we mentioned before, the fluier. I should write those ones. Well, the let me make sure I get the spelling right. Yeah, that's it. And it dropped the ney and had instead of this the fluier, which is like a caval. Yes. So that's basically about the lineup, and that's all about the lautari music. So let's go to the manele music next. And the first track I played in the introduction was one of these manele tracks. This music developed underground in the times of Ceausescu. All the types of musics which weren't allowed, like gypsy music, Turkish music, Arabian music, and other foreign, not clean music styles, they sort of gave this mishmash. It developed sort of in this suburban style. It was, of course, a condemned type of music, but in the black market it was booming. A Romanian ethnomusicologist called Radulescu, she said it was later wrongly labeled gypsy music. One of the most famous performers of this music is Adrian Minoni. He is, of course, a Romani singer, and let's play one of his early tracks.
E una țigănie și toți moldeni o știe, băieții nu ce firma și cheamă bambina. La nuntă mă distră și-mi cântă lăutare, iar florarii privesc cum dă bambina banii. La nuntă mă distră și-mi cântă lăutare, iar florarii privesc cum dă bambina banii. La nuntă mă distră și-mi cântă lăutare, iar florarii privesc cum dă bambina banii. La nuntă mă distră și cântă lăutare, iar florarii privesc cum dă bambina banii.
And so on. Well, it's...
Can I ask again something? Right now you're talking about the other type of music, right? In Romania and Manele, or what's...
Yeah, I should write it. So manele. That's
Manele. This is kind of a popular music of Romania. You mean that popular music?
Well, yes, it is a, well, if I say it's a popular music, it's difficult to say, because right now it's not so popular anymore, because it has too many negative connotations. It was just a style of music which developed underground. And unfortunately, I used to have an old album, because when I was the first time in Romania, it's more than 15 years ago. And everybody was listening to Adrian up and down, and the music was different. It was wilder and much more gypsy in a way, just like improvised elements and stuff. And I was looking, I had a CD and I cannot find the CD. I was already, I think last year, looking for it because I wanted it for something, because you could just like demonstrate a lot of great things. And also, whilst this music I find boring, actually, it's like a pop music and very standardized, and yes, just like really to do some kind of bit boring dancing to it, but it's the closest I could I could find. So the really old manele, which was fun, there is nothing which you can get hold of here. And my own album which I had, I think it was actually on a cassette, on a tape, on like these old, do you still all know cassettes? You might. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. As a collection, of course.
Yeah, here in Britain, if I would ask my young students, anything up to 20 years, do you know what a tape is and a tape recorder? They would have no idea. They have never seen those things. It's so long out of fashion. But I know that in Balkan countries, certainly they had much longer tapes around. So yeah. Anyway, so my Adrian music is gone, and I could not find anything which represents more the old style, which was also quite funky, quite poppy, but a lot more fun and creative. So it is called old manele, but it's actually not that old. And yes, just basically pop music. And I have one other track which is a bit more creative, because one speciality why manele is still quite popular for weddings. And you have these famous manele singers. I would say 95 to 98% of them are Romani. Is that they improvise, and they improvise their lyrics spontaneously, fitting to the occasion. So when they come to a wedding and they sing, they just like really sing to the people. And I don't know, maybe they know the people or they have met them before a few times, but just like really sing very personalized lyrics, which is obviously at a party, at a private party like a wedding, very entertaining and very, connects people a lot. And this track, this next track which I play to you is like from a wedding, and you can hear a bit of that spontaneity on there. Because there are some parts. Let's see if I find them again. Okay, enough manele for today.
And I asked something again. You mentioned that this kind of music, musician of this kind of music is mostly from Romanian people, right? Not Romani.
Mostly Romani people.
Romani, gypsy.
Gypsy, yeah. You couldn't officially say gypsy people because it's politically not correct. But as I mentioned before, Romani, Romanian is so similar that it's quite...
It can confuse, so I don't want to say something wrong, so I want to ask you again.
Yes, it is mostly gypsy singers. In the nowadays you can hear this music is mostly electronically done, and the people who program it or who produce it or promote it might be Romani or might not be Romani, but Romani Gypsy, but the singers, pretty much all singers I ever have come across are of the Romani Gypsy tradition, but there are some white Romanian singers also. But you know, the very interesting thing is, if you ask Romanian people, so white Romanian people, about gypsy music, they will tell you, oh yeah, it's manele. So for them, manele is gypsy music. Ethnomusicologically, as we heard, it's again, you can't really say it's gypsy music. It has gypsy elements, and in the development, obviously there were a lot of gypsy Romani musicians involved, developing it underground. And again, it's sang most of the time by gypsy Romani musicians. But the music itself is a fusion of loads of things. So, yes, I think you can do a little bit of translation on this one.
Çeviri için birazcık zaman ayırdık. Nerede kaldık? Diğer ikinci tarz, yani manele dediğimiz müzik tarzında kaldık sanıyorum. En başta bahsettiğimiz müzisyen grubundan konuşmuştuk bir tane. Ne demiştik ona? Lautari müzikleri hakkında konuşmuştuk. Şimdi manele dediğimiz, aslında pop müzik gibi düşünebiliriz ama popüler demek konusuna biraz temkinli yaklaştı. Bunun da nedeni, hani bir 50 yıl önce belki çok fazla işte dinleniyor, bu tarz çok beğeniliyorken hani günümüzde çok popüler olduğunu söyleyemeyiz. Ama tabii ki hani pop müzik tarzı olarak düşünebileceğimiz müzik tarzı. Yaklaşık işte %90, %95 diyebileceğimiz büyük bir çoğunluğu yine Çingene müzisyenler tarafından icra ediliyor. Biraz kavram karmaşası yaşadık. Romani, Romanian, hani burada özellikle Gypsy, yani Çingene müzikleri Romani diye söz ettiği isimler Çingene oluyor. O şekilde açıklama yapayım. Bunun dışında yine oldukça yaratıcı, oldukça eğlenceli bir tarzı temsil eden bu müzik örneği içerisinde Adrian ne demiştik? Aşağıya yazdım sanıyorum. Az önce dinlediğimiz müzisyen. Evet. Ama temel olarak evet, bundan bahsettik. Romanyalı, pardon, ben de notlarımı takip ediyorum, kaçırıyorum çünkü, atlamayalım. Yine hani partiler, düğünler, hani o anda icra edilen ve birazcık demeyelim, çoğunlukla duruma göre doğaçlamaya dayanan, çoğunluğu da Çingene müzisyenler tarafından icra edilen bir tür dedik. Ancak yine etnomüzikolojik açıdan bakarsak tam olarak bu müzik türü Çingene müziğidir diyemeyiz. Ama çoğunlukla onlar tarafından icra ediliyor diyebiliriz. Yine çünkü farklı unsurları barındırıyor dedik kısacası. Aslında şeyle ilgili hani biraz günümüzde pek çok müziğe baktığımızda hani bu saf şu müziğidir, işte falanca gruba aittir diyemiyoruz. İster istemez uzunca yıllar geçince pek çok unsurdan etkileniyor. Genel olarak hani bunları bu şekilde değerlendirdi. Burada bitirelim. Buraya kadar sormak istediğiniz bir şey var mı? Ben yoksa tekrar döneceğim kendisine.
Teşekkür ederiz. Sağ ol.
Rica ederim. Okay, we are done for now. Thank you.
Yes. So we have one more little chapter, because when you talk about Romanian gypsy music, you have to mention them because, again, over here, they're very famous and you might come across this specific band, which is Fanfare Cecorlia. I should again write it for you. Fanfare Cecorlia. And they are also a band of Romani musicians playing brass instruments, which is very unusual, in my opinion, because it's the only Romani brass band in Romania, I know. Everywhere else, and I've been to different places around the country, you only find like the lineups as we had in the Lautari musicians with violin, cymbalum, accordion, and different variations of this one. So, Fanfari Chakulia are from a village, let me find the village name, from a Moldavian, the name is not important, from a Moldavian village, and the family has roots in Austrian and Turkish military brass bands. So that is one reason how they come about to play brass. Just like Taraf the Haiduks and many other Romani bands, they played, you know, they are from a village, and for their living they used to play for weddings and other celebrations until those German managers popped up in their village and were looking for some musicians and found Fanfari Chakurlia and made them famous on the world music scene in Western Europe and also the States. And before this, yes, they performed village music. Now the first sample I want to play is from their first album, when the music was still not so influenced by the commercial world, and more what they used to play. And so on. Yes, so they are a band of Gypsy Romani people, Gypsy Romani musicians, and they play a track, and if you saw the name, it's Циганерска, which basically means gypsy. If you look at the music style, I don't know if you are familiar at all with klezmer music. Klezmer music is the folk music basically of Eastern European Jewish people, and the whole first section was exactly, you know, from the melodies and the harmonies and the accompaniment like this klezmer music, and then there was this change, and afterwards you could again hear these elements like Romanian dances, you know, like we heard from Taraf to Haiduks and from before. So again, the question, is it gypsy music or is it Romanian music performed by Gypsy Romani musicians? And I play you another track. Now they will start from the beginning again. Oh, now here we are back. Yes, so this one, is it a gypsy piece or not? In a way it is, but it's not at all Romanian. This is a typical Balkan brass piece, like you hear in Serbia and Macedonia a lot. You can hear Latin rhythms underneath. You can hear the Balkan he jazz mode, which is slightly different from the Turkish he jazz mode because it doesn't have microtones and it's only a mode. It doesn't have all the other attributes of a makam to it. And you can hear improvisation in Mane style. So again, a little bit like Taksim, freely over a ostinato rhythm going on. And these are all the typical elements of modern Balkan Gypsy Romani music, but it's not Romanian. Okay, and with this one we sort of conclude our journey of Romanian gypsy music. Before we do the translation, let me do a little bit of a summary. So, Romanian gypsy music, we have experienced that it's very much depends on who is listening to, in how you can use the terminology. If it's like Western people dancing at festivals to their music, they always will, without question, call it gypsy music. Then ethnomusicologists, sometimes they can maybe half call it gypsy music because you have certain elements, but never truly. It's very difficult because many elements playing together. But what is definitely true is there is a lot of amazing Romani musicians out there, and whichever style they are demanded to play by the circumstances, because they have to earn their money with it, they make the best out of it and develop those styles further and bring their amazing performance skills and musical, technical skills and their charisma in, and just make it into amazing, music style. So may it be Romani or not Romani, the music which is the outcome is always something very special. And that is basically the end of our journey of Romanian music played by Romanian gypsy Romani musicians.
Okay, thank you very much. It was quite enjoyable and learn so much things again. I tried to summarize all the things until here. Buraya kadar artık hani burada son verdiğimiz örnekle birlikte yani kimi konuştuk? Fanfare, son konuştuğumuz müzisyen topluluğu, Macaristan kökenli bir aileden geldiğini açıkladı. Çingene müzisyenlerinden yine önemli bu müzik türünün önemli temsilcilerinden bir tanesi ve hepsi için aslında genel olarak düğünlerde, çeşitli işte eğlencelerde, icra mekanlarında icra ettiğini söyledi. Devam edelim. Özellikle Batı Avrupa'da ve Romanya'da çok meşhur olan isimlerden bir tanesi. İlk dinlediğimiz eseri yine ilk albümünden bir tane örnekti. Yani başlangıçtan sonrasına doğru ilerliyor genel olarak ki bu etkileşimleri takip edebilelim. İlk albümün özellikle son dönemin müzik piyasasından henüz çok etkilenmediği dönemlerden bir örnek dinledik. Yine Çingene müzisyenler aslında buradaki kavram Çingene anlamına geliyor dedi sanıyorum. O noktayı bir sormak istiyorum. Yanlış anlamış olabilirim. Daha önce dinlediğimiz hani buradaki dans ya da müziğe ilişkin unsurlar önceki müzisyenlerden Hodek ve öncesindeki tarza benziyor demişti. Bunun dışında ne ilave ettik? Aslında bu dinlediğimiz örnek bir Romanya şarkısı ancak içinde yine farklı unsurlar var. Örneğin Latin ritimleri var, Balkanlardaki işte makamsal örnekler, yine Taksim gibi doğaçlamalar var. Özellikle doğaçlama son örnekte benim de dikkatimi çekti eserin ilerleyen bölümlerinde. Modern Balkan Çingene Müzikleri aslında olarak adlandırdı son olarak. Burayı kısaca bir özetledik. Aslında şöyle, genel olarak Romanya'da Çingene müzikleri kimin dinlediği ve terminolojiyi nasıl kullandığına bağlı olarak farklı şekilde algılanabilir dedi. Etnomüzikolojik açıdan aslında yarım Çingene müziği, yani çünkü burada hep bahsettiği gibi etkileşim çok fazla farklı unsurlardan çok etkilendiğini bu müzik türlerinin görüyoruz. Bu nedenle hangi tarz talep ediliyorsa, hangi işte bulundukları, icra ettikleri ortamda ne tür bir müzik talep ediliyorsa hemen ona adapte olduklarını, ona göre, çünkü oldukça usta müzisyenler ve bu şekilde geçimlerini sağlıyorlar ve müzik alanında zaten çok iyi ve yetkin oldukları için ihtiyaç durumuna göre nasıl bir müzik talep ediliyorsa anında onu ortaya koyabiliyorlar şeklinde bunu toparladık. Buraya kadar sormak istediğiniz herhangi bir şey var mı? Varsa sorularınızı yöneltebiliriz.
Benim yok. Çok teşekkür ediyorum. Sağ olun.
Well, so are there any questions?
Sorunuz var mı diyor kendisi.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Gundula.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. And I hope you didn't just enjoy the talk, you also enjoyed the music, even some of those bit strange Manele tracks.
No, it was delicious and very enlightening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Çok teşekkürler. I forgot all my Turkish. I still, when you speak, Ezgi, I still understand, quite a few things, but I forgot how to speak properly.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Thank you very much. It was really enjoyable and we learned so much here again. We appreciated you. Thank you very much. Next time, hopefully, see you again.
Well, there is one more plan for next week. The week after, Cenk wanted to have he wanted the 4 lectures, but the Friday after I'm busy. So I think next week there should be another one. Probably the same time, but again, I don't know right now. I will communicate with Cenk and
yes, you can arrange the time with Cenk Hoca and we'll let our participants know the time. It's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
have a
you.
lovely evening and have a very nice weekend and hopefully then see you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. See you.
Bye bye. See you.
Thank you. Gundula, well said. Thank you Ezgi. Ağzına sağlık.
Evet Ezgi, çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Rica ederim. Rica ederim.
Thank
Evet.
you for translating it all and good. Then bye bye. See you soon.